In the last stream, we were working on getting started with the the putting to work of these 3 villagers inside of these 3 unearthers, and as of the end of the last episode, we do now have 1 villager that is sifting through sand, 1 that's sifting through gravel, and 1 that is sifting through dust. We have cobblestone being generated via our cobblestone generator, and then we have 7 different hammers that are all working to produce the gravel, the sand, and the dust. And as we can see, even with all of these guys running at their current max speed, without food that is, we are still producing more than enough sand, gravel, and dust to keep all of these going, and we are actually getting quite a decent amount of resources from these 3 unearthers. Our center worker here is already up at the master level, so he is now the highest tier of a geologist he can be, and our other 2 workers are currently at level 3 and well on their way to level 4, and then I'm assuming hopefully by the end of today's stream they will get to level 5. The center worker is almost completely out of durability on his reinforced brush. We might have to look at either getting a second reinforced brush or potentially look at getting an enchanted reinforced brush, which I have been told we might be able to buy from some of the echoes at spawn. But what I want to work on at the start of today's stream is, before we really get started with any other work, I would like to do a little bit of base design work, because right now we have got a tiny little cuboidal room with really not enough space for all of the stuff that we have already, let alone all of the stuff that I would like to start working on in today's stream. And so I think the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab some iron. I'm going to move the crafting station here over to between the 2 inventories that are currently holding most of our resources. The reason for that is that now, with the crafting station next to these inventories, we can access those inventories from within the crafting station interface. And even better than that, I'm fairly certain that if we go and shift-click a recipe, for example, I would like to make the chisel here from the re-chiseled mod. If I click move items, it's going to pull a stick from one of these inventories if we have it ready to go. And I think the same is also true for iron as well. For example, if I put some iron and the stick into here, and I go ahead and do that again, move items, it's going to pull everything we need for that recipe from adjacent inventories, meaning that we don't have to go and sift through both inventories to find the items we need, which is just going to make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier going forward. And if I'm not mistaken, what we should be able to do here is, if we go to the iron chests mod, we could even look at making an iron to gold chest upgrade, thus allowing us to make our iron chest here just that little bit bigger, like so. And then we could even take it 1 step further, because we've got even more diamonds than we do gold, and we could look at making the gold to diamond chest upgrade, like so, making it again even larger. We could then go up to either a crystal or an obsidian chest, but I'm fairly certain that both of those are the exact same size as the diamond chest. The only benefit to the obsidian chest is that it is blast proof, and the only benefit to the crystal chest is that you can see through it, kind of like what we have with the crystal barrel here. Neither of those upgrades, I think, are particularly worth it for us right now. And so instead, what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use our hammer. I might even look actually at making the diamond version of the hammer, because it's just going to have way more durability. And I'm going to take some of the cobblestone that we are backing up on in our generator drawer, and we can now use that inside of the chisel here to get a bunch of different textures of cobblestone. And one of the nifty things here is we can kind of visualize what it's going to look like. We can even turn connected textures on and off. Some of these do have connected textures, some of them don't. For example, right here, you can see the connected texture off, and then if we turn it on, you can see what it looks like with the connected texture on. And we can also, I think, do the exact same with stone as well. And given that we do now have an emerald furnace, we should be able to smelt up a ton of stone quite quickly. We could look at making the speed augment for this as well. In fact, it really doesn't look too difficult to make. We did get some sugarcane last episode for fighting through the gateway pearl to get all of our passive mobs, and so we should be able to go ahead and make some paper here, and then potentially from there just go ahead and craft up this speed augment. This does double the amount of fuel that the furnace will burn through, but it also halves the cook time, and so it essentially makes the furnace twice as fast as it already is, and it's already way faster than the previous tiers that we had in the last episode. And so if we do something like this, it's now going to smelt even faster than it did previously. And so now we can make a decent amount of stone. And again, that just gives us even more options in terms of what we actually want to build out of. And so real quick, what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and using the diamond hammer here, I'm going to clear out a fairly large area of base. I'm going to use the chisel here to get some nice looking blocks using either stone, cobblestone, maybe brick. We do have quite a bit of brick that's been smelted in here. I've been trying to filter the clay out into this chest because we are going to need clay in clay form at some point in today's stream, but a fair amount of it has already been turned into brick, and so we do have the option, of course, here of making just regular Minecraft bricks and using those for decoration as well. Along the same lines, I might also look at getting some more of the different types of wood that we have. We got spruce, we got birch, we got dark oak, and we've got acacia. We could always look at getting another bonsai pot for any of those woods to get a large amount of those woods and use those in the base design as well. Alright, so I started digging out the space here, and I've started putting down a few blocks where I want my future walls to go. But before we continue, there are a few things that I want to tweak with our current setup. One of the things I would like to tweak is that we did get given this Boon of the Earth 5 enchantment book in the last episode, and if we were to quickly spend some of our very large amount of iron here on getting an anvil, we should be able to apply that to our hammer, which is going to allow us to start getting some passive extra resources whilst we dig out our massive cave area. So if we do something like this, we get Boon of the Earth 5 on our hammer. It costs 25 experience levels, which we don't currently have. However, I think if I were to break the furnace here, we might be able to get up to level 25. We totally can. Fantastic. And then we can replace this down, replace in the speed augment, and then make sure that we reconfigure this to input from the back, output to the right, and make sure auto input is on. And then back over here, we should now be able to do this and this and this. And so now, as we break more of our room going forward, we're going to get some extra resources that we can then always process in the future. It's not a ton of stuff, but I felt like it might have been worth doing. And then back over here, you'll see this is not working. And the reason this is not working is because apparently the Orotech pipes here try and pull from the first inventory in the chest. And so right now it's trying to pull the bone meal and it's trying to insert it into this side of the furnace, which of course does not work. But the good news is this is a sophisticated chest, and so in the top right here, we can click settings, we can click on this slot memory settings option, the one that looks like a brain, and in here we can change the slot memory. So if I were to put coal here, it's going to pull the coal out real fast and put it into the furnace, which is good. So we want to make sure that only coal can go in this first slot. To do that, we go settings, we go memory, and then we just go ahead and left click on the coal. Now, if we leave and we take the coal out, you'll see that first slot there is locked to coal. So any coal that is generated going forward will go into this slot first, which means that it will always get priority when being extracted by this Orotech pipe into our furnace. And so now this should just continue to work. Again, I'm going to take a bunch of this clay out and make sure we store it over here because we are going to need this clay in order to make some fire bricks for something we're going to work on later on in the episode. But I just wanted to make sure that this kept working whilst we were working on the base design. All right, we're still working on the base overhaul, but we did just get a wandering trader arrive as part of one of the FTB events, and the Twitch chat is telling me that this pitcher plant is kind of OP, and so I'm just going to go ahead and buy this, and we'll figure out what it does later on. And not too long later, the base is very much still a work in progress. We do not have a roof just yet, but we do have a lot more space than we had previously, and things are a little bit more organized than they were before as well. We do have some work to do over here, but the first thing that I would like to do is kind of brighten this place up a little bit. I do have the light overlay on, and so we're not at any risk of mobs spawning here, but it is pretty dark, and I don't love the way the torches look. And so what I am thinking of doing right away here is grabbing some of this glass that I just smelted up and seeing if we can't make at least one of these feral flare lanterns. They're super easy to make. It's just 2 gold, 2 glass, and 1 glowstone dust. And the idea behind the feral flare lantern here is that it places down a bunch of invisible lights in a fairly large radius around where you place it. And so if we place it down here, it's going to go ahead and start putting down little invisible lights all around the base, to the point where we should be able to get rid of the torches we have here, and you'll see that the base is kind of passively being lit up slowly but surely by that feral flare lantern, and over the course of the next couple of minutes, it should fill the room with those little lights, brightening the whole place up. And there we go. Not too long later, we now have a fully lit up room without any torches in sight. And over here, I've gone ahead and moved these hammers and storage drawers forward a bit to allow us to embed them in the wall here. I think it looks just a little bit nicer. And now I'm going to do a bit of kind of pipe reorganizing to try and hide most of the pipes that we have here. So for example, over in the back, we can kind of just do something like this. We can just extract from these kind of down into their respective unearthers like this to make sure that all of these are set to extract. And then on the front, if we do a quick /home, we can then just extract from the bottom of each of these and then insert into the diamond chest. And that's going to allow us to kind of hide these cables underground, which I think is going to look just a little bit nicer. So for example, this one here, we can just do something like this, make sure this is set to extract, and then do a quick /home. And then from there, we can do the exact same thing with this one here. And of course, with this one here. We might have to make some more cables. We only have 3 honors. Although I'm assuming these are not too difficult to make. They are not. They are just nickel and planks, and we have a bunch of nickel in here. In order to do some of this pipe work, it is probably going to be a good idea for us to get the pipe wrench from Oritech. This should allow us, for example, to disconnect some of the pipes, because I'm going to go ahead and insert here like this. Obviously, it'd be nice if we could disconnect that, and then I would also like to extract from the bottom here. This is where we're going to extract the fuel. I have moved this chest, but I have also gone ahead and relocked this slot to coal. And so now we can set this to not do that. We want to right-click it with an empty hand, not with the wrench. So we want to right-click here to disconnect, and then right-click here with the empty hand to allow the fuel to be extracted. Fantastic. And then we're going to go ahead, of course, and just kind of route these pipes around to here, ideally, which is going to be easiest done, actually, if we just break that stone, if we do something like this. And then it's going to allow us to extract everything from all 3 of these unearthers round to the center without having to kind of visually see any of the pipes, which I think is just going to look that little bit cleaner. Something like this. So now we can't see any of the pipes, but everything is being extracted and piped round, which is good. One last thing we could do if we wanted to make this look just a little bit better is we could also look at replacing the storage drawers that we have there with framed drawers. These are exactly the same, but you can customize the look of the storage drawer. So if we were to do something like this, and then if we were to craft some iron nuggets, we could then craft a regular storage drawer with 8 iron nuggets to get a framed drawer. And the idea here is that we could then go and grab some of the smooth stone that we've been using for our base decoration. And then if we do something like this, we can then retexture this drawer to look that little bit different, and it's kind of going to match what we have already. I don't know if this is the exact look we want for our frame drawers. We might eventually want something that looks a little bit different, a little bit more dynamic, but for the time being, as kind of a proof of concept, if we were to go ahead and break this. By the way, if you're going to break a storage drawer, you do have to mine the outside edge bit here or one of the other sides. If you try and mine from the front, it will never break. It just keeps giving you more items, so just bear that in mind. But here, for example, we could do something like this, and I don't know if that necessarily looks better, but the concept is there. I'll tinker around with that in the future to see if there's like a better design that we can go with. But now that we have organized our base a little bit, and now that we have some more space, let's take a look at actually completing some of the quests that we unlocked in the last episode. So we unlocked the Magician, the Quartermaster, and the Machinist, and we have to complete the Quartermaster, and then optionally we have to complete one of these 2 as well before we go back to the Echo of Guidance to progress forward in the pack. The very first quest from the Quartermaster here is Infusing Metals. It says to upgrade the world engine, you'll need to make some basic machines for processing materials. To do this, you'll need some basic circuitry and metallic alloys. A metallurgic infuser would be a great machine for this. You will also need a very durable machine casing to house the components. And so we need a metallurgic infuser and we need a dielectric casing. The metallurgic infuser here should be very easy to make. It's 2 regular furnaces as well as 1 osmium, 4 iron, and 2 redstone. We actually don't have an osmium in there, but we do have no osmium in here either. we did get quite a lot of raw ores from our diamond hammer with Boon of the Earth 5, and in here, one of those raw ores is osmium. And so if we quickly go ahead and smelt that up, which is easier said than done because we are currently pretty low on fuel. However, we do of course have our botany pots over here, which are basically a limitless supply of fuel, which we can go ahead and throw in like that. The reason we don't have any fuel, of course, is that these guys have completely run out of brush durability. One thing we can do here is we can go back to the Quartermaster, and I believe the Quartermaster will sell us a brush with Unbreaking 5. He does, but we haven't unlocked it yet. I think we have to complete this task here to get the Metallurgic Infuser and the Dielectric Casing. Once we've done that, I think we're going to unlock the ability to buy this brush with Unbreaking 5, which I think is probably going to be worth doing because we could then also go ahead and upgrade that brush to Reinforced, which is going to give us the best of both worlds. It's going to give us a super high durability brush that also has Unbreaking 5, and that should last a really, really, really long time in each of those unearthers. Back here at our base, though, we should now have the osmium required. In fact, it looks like we already did have osmium. It's the texture that's changed since the last time I played, which is why it looked a little bit different. But with that osmium, we can make a Metallurgic Infuser, and that is going to complete that part of the quest. As for the dielectric casing, we need 4 iron and then 2 horizontal and 2 regular dielectric rods. These are made with iron bars, which we can definitely make, and then dielectric paste. The dielectric paste is made by combining coal or charcoal with clay and a bucket of lava. And as we saw before, we can go ahead and use our entropy manipulator here on just a regular piece of stone to get a bucket of lava. And so if we do something like this on our very wooden floor, we can get a bucket of lava. And then if we have enough coal or charcoal, which we don't, we could have then looked at making the dielectric paste. Again, the good news is that we should be able to hijack some wood, throw that in here, give that some fuel, and we're going to very quickly get more than enough charcoal to make our first batch of dielectric paste. And then from there, we actually just need to make 1 set of dielectric rods because we can then craft 2 of those into horizontal dielectric rods. And from there, that's everything we need to make the dielectric casing. That does complete the quest because the last optional quest here is to make a power generation source. We are probably going to need to make one of these as well because of the fact that we do need to be able to power the Metallurgic Infuser in order to actually complete some of the future quests. It does, however, now say that we should return to the Quartermaster once we have completed this task. Can I do /back? I can do /back. I can't do it more than once. I was hoping I could do /back and that would take me back to the Quartermaster. If we did /home and then /back from the Quartermaster, I think that would have worked. But for now, we're going to have to go manually back to the Quartermaster, which thankfully is not too far away. And I believe that once we go and talk to this guy, not only is that going to unlock for us the ability to buy those aforementioned Unbreaking 5 brushes, but it's also hopefully going to unlock the next quest in the quest book here as well.
With this piece of infrastructure set up, you should be good to make the trek down to the old world engine. And you'll need to bring some power from your base to power it. Now, head on down to the world engine. Bring plenty of those steel mechanical components, some basic control circuits, a handful of electrum wires, and make sure not to forget those dielectric casings you made earlier. Double check you got enough to make a whole load of them machine blocks, as you're gonna need at least 64 of them. All of this mess is what holds the entire dang thing together, so don't mess it up. Now good luck.
Alright, so we need to craft 64 world engine machine blocks. Real quick, I'm going to buy 3 brushes. That is going to cost us 45 coins, but I think it's probably worth it. And then on top of that, I do think it's going to be worth, once again, going back to spawn so that we can buy 3 of the upgrade templates that we're going to need if we want to upgrade these from regular brushes to reinforced brushes. That's going to cost us an extra 30, which takes us down to just 55 bucks. But I think it's probably going to be worth it in the long run. If we head on back over here, we can do something like this, this, and this. That gives us a reinforced brush with Unbreaking 5, and the way that Unbreaking 5 works, it means that there's an 80% chance that durability is not used, and so effectively, we should get about 5 times the durability out of this brush, which means we're going to get somewhere in the region of 6,000 uses out of each brush, as opposed to the default 1,152 that we've been getting so far. So we'll throw all these back in, and hopefully, they're going to last a very, very long time. Now that that's back online, though, we can look back in the quest book at this next section. So the final quest here that we are working towards is to make 64 of these world engine machine blocks. And so to do that, we're going to need 4 dielectric casing, we're going to need 8 steel mechanical components, we're going to need to get 4 basic control circuits, and then 8 electrum wire. That does seem pretty doable. Getting 4 of these should be pretty straightforward. We can make more of the dielectric rods, and then from there we can go ahead and I think fairly easily make a few more of these. Getting 4 should be pretty straightforward if we do this and this. Boom, that is that bit taken care of. Next up, we have these basic control circuits. If we're going to get the basic control circuits, we do need to get some form of power generation, and I do think that getting either the simple cold generator or the regular cold generator is going to be just the easiest way of us getting some temporary power to run the metallurgic infuser. And then inside of the metallurgic infuser, the basic control circuit is super straightforward. It's just 1 redstone and 1 osmium gets you 1 basic control circuit. And so really getting 4 of these shouldn't be that bad either. So if we want to make the simple coal generator here, we need 4 ferrocoal, 2 redstone, 2 coal, and a blast furnace. Most of that should be fairly straightforward. Getting a blast furnace, we should just be able to click in the recipe. We totally can. And then as for getting ferrocore, this is made using the goo from just dire things. Specifically, we need to start with the first tier of goo, which is primogel goo. This is made from clay, rotten flesh, dirt, and sugar, all of which we should be able to make. We'll just get 2 sugar real quick, and boom, that gets us primogel goo. And then from there, we can use the primogel goo to turn blocks of iron into raw ferrocore ore. And so if we were to quickly grab a few blocks of iron, we could then go ahead and place this down really anywhere that we like. For now, what I will do is I'll kind of place it down, let's say right about here, because I'm trying to maximize the number of faces. You can put down iron all around this. So if we do 1, 2, and 3, that is going to work. This does require fuel though in order to actually start working. You'll see here it requires either sugar or rotten flesh. We should have, I think, a fairly decent amount of rotten flesh in here. We do indeed. If we take 1 of those and just right click it onto the primogel goo, that's going to activate the goo and it will begin infecting the blocks of iron, and then slowly over the course of the next maybe 60 seconds, it's going to convert the iron into ferrocore that we can then break and smelt into ferrocore ingots. And so once we have those, that should be the simple coal generator good to go, and that's going to allow us to make those basic control circuits. That just leaves us with the steel mechanical components and the electrum wire. Both of these require that we first make plates. We need to make electrum plates for the electrum wire, and we need to make steel plates for the steel mechanical components. To do that, I think it's going to be in our best interest to set up a foundry from the Productive Metalworks mod. There is a quest for this under the general text section of the quest book. Right here, it says Productive Metalworks Foundry. Productive Metalworks is used to smelt and forge alloys and cast them into various different parts. Start by making some fire clay and then smelting that into fire bricks. These will be used to build the structure for the foundry. And so to make fire clay, as the quest book suggested, we just need sand and clay. Thankfully, we have a ton of sand over here, and this is the main reason why I have been siphoning out all of the clay that we have in here. We got way more than we're going to need in reality, but having extra is never a bad thing. We're going to go ahead and make as much of that as we can, and then, of course, smelt that over in our emerald furnace here, like so. That's going to give us, hopefully, more than enough fire brick to actually start building the foundry. And so this kind of works in a similar way to a Tinker's Construct smeltery, if you've played with that in the past. Real quick, our ferrocore is done, and so over here, we can go ahead and ultimine harvest that to get ourselves 11 raw ferrocore, which we can then, of course, place into the emerald furnace as well, with yet more fuel to get the ferrocore required in order to make the simple coal generator. That does also require some amount of coal, and we have yet to get any coal, and that is because I broke and replaced the drawer that's holding gravel. And so I think the problem we're currently running into is that the pipe behind the gravel is not extracting anymore because I broke and replaced the drawer. And so real quick, if I were to do something like this, that should actually get the whole system back online and should start putting more fuel again into that emerald furnace. There we go. Once we got some fuel, we can turn this back on. I turned it off temporarily to allow us to siphon some coal out of there. Back over here, that's everything for the simple coal generator. For now, I'm going to go ahead and place this down over here. And if we place the metallurgic infuser next to it, we should be able to put some fuel into the coal generator. I'm really hoping that the coal generator runs on more than just coal. It totally does. Fantastic. That's going to provide power to the adjacent metallurgic infuser. And from there, all we need to do is take a little bit of redstone out of here, place that into the leftmost slot in the metallurgic infuser, 1 per basic control circuit that we want. We want 4, so I'll put 4 redstone in here, and then we'll put 4 osmium in here. And that's going to slowly but surely produce 4 basic control circuits for us. Back over here, we were trying to make this productive metalworks foundry, and as I mentioned, it's kind of like a Tinker's Construct smeltery. It does have a ponder option, so if you hover over, for example, the controller, you can ponder, and it does show you here the construction of the foundry. The smallest foundry you can make is a 3x3x2, which is 3 wide, 3 deep, and 2 tall, so a little bit smaller than this, but it's probably going to be in our best interest to make a slightly bigger foundry just to give us a bit more smelting capacity. And so to make this, we are going to need to get a foundry controller. We're going to need a foundry tank. We're also going to need to get 9 liquid heating coils. Again, you can make this with as few as 1, but having more does make the capacity bigger and is probably going to be our best bet, especially considering that to make it, we really just need copper, fire bricks, and buckets, which are all resources we have in abundance at this point. And then finally, we're also going to want to get a foundry drain, as well as a casting basin, a casting table, and a foundry tap. And again, all of these are fire bricks, and so real quick, I'm just going to make sure we've got way more of these. I'm going to craft up even more fire clay to make even more fire bricks, and once we've got a few stacks of those, we'll look at putting this foundry together. And once we have over 3 stacks of fire bricks back over here, let's start by making a few of these. I think the quest book wanted us to have at least 21 to complete the quest there. It did indeed. The controller is going to require another blast furnace. That is fine. It looks like we are out of iron, but we actually have loads of it. It's just not connected to our crafting station. We are going to have to craft up 9 buckets if we want to be able to craft up all 9 of the liquid heating coils, and apparently we already had a few buckets. That is fine. I am going to craft up specifically 9, like so. Then from there, we should be able now to make the blast furnace for the controller. We can. And on top of that, we should be able to make the foundry tank because we have at least 1 glass in our system. The liquid heating coils have been made. The black fire bricks have been made. The foundry drain is just fire bricks on their own. And then the casting basin is pretty straightforward. The casting table is also pretty straightforward. And then finally, the foundry tap is, you guessed it, just more fire bricks. And so what I am going to do now is I'm going to embed this in the wall right here. So to do that, we do need to have the 3x3 area of liquid heating coils down on the ground. Unlike the Tinker's smeltery, you do have to fill in the sides of this machine. What I mean by that is that usually with the Tinker's smeltery, you can kind of put down the bottom like this, and then you can put the next layer kind of down like this. I don't believe that works with this multi-block. I think you do have to kind of fill in the entire ring around the bottom, and then the entire ring on the next level as well. And so we are going to have to dig out these bits here and kind of make sure that this is like fully filled in like that. And then we're also going to have to make sure that the second ring is also fully filled in as well. For that, we are going to need some more of these bricks, although we should also make sure that we throw down the controller. We'll put that in the middle, like so. We're going to throw down the drain. This is where we're going to pull out all of the molten liquids. And then we also want the tank. This is where we're going to put our fuel. In this case, we have the liquid heating coils, and so we're going to use lava as our fuel source. And then from there, we actually just need 1, 2, 3, 4. We need 1 more, unfortunately. That is kind of fine, although it looks like I might have been incorrect about needing the corners. I think the top and bottoms are still required. If I get rid of that, yeah, this doesn't work. So you do need to have the lower levels, but it looks like you might not need these corner bits here to make it work. You might just have to have the top and bottom. I also believe that going forward, we can add more levels of the black fire brick, which we might as well do actually here because we have so many of these fire bricks ready to go. So I think we can do something like this. Again, the corners there, not necessary. So if we just do something like this, that's going to increase the internal capacity of this and allow us to smelt even more at once, which is good. So now if we fill this in, we have a little bit of a foundry. I might actually leave these here cut out because I think it looks just that little bit nicer. And now we can actually melt things down inside of the foundry and then pull them out using the foundry drain. what I am going to do, I'm going to put down both the casting table and the casting basin, like that. For now, we only need the casting table, so I'm going to put the Foundry tap onto the side of the Foundry drain that is next to the casting table, and we need to make a plate mold. Also, we need to collect all of the wares from our latest loot bee, and make sure we drop all those into our chests here, but we need to make a plate mold, which might be called a plate cast, in order to actually get plates out of this. Now, to make a plate cast, we're going to need one of any plates, and then we're going to need to pull over 360 millibuckets, or 4 ingots, of molten steel. Molten steel we can make inside of the foundry by combining carbon and iron. Carbon, in this case, being coal. So I think what might be our best option here, I'm also hoping that we can use charcoal instead of regular coal to get carbon. If we were to go ahead and quickly smelt up some charcoal here, we should then hopefully be able to smelt that down in here. Of course, we do need to put lava in there, and so real quick, let's grab our entropy manipulator, and let's once again throw down some stone, boom, and boom. If we put the lava in, that is hopefully going to melt the charcoal. Never mind, it is not going to melt the charcoal. That means we do need regular coal. Okay, so good news and bad news. The good news is we can use the charcoal. The bad news is it's not done in the foundry. We have to do it in the metallurgic infuser. It turns out that you can't even put coal into the foundry either. That also won't make carbon. If we look again at the recipe here for the molten steel, it does require molten carbon, but you can only get molten carbon by melting down carbon fiber strands, which we do not yet have the ability to make. And so it turns out that if we want to make some steel, we have to do it in the metallurgic infuser. The metallurgic infuser, as it turns out, requires 2 redstone per control circuit, and so we actually have to put 8 in, not 4. And so if we put the osmium back in, that's going to go ahead and get us the 2 remaining basic control circuits. Fantastic. At which point we can then put in some coal and some iron. And here, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to take 20 millibuckets of carbon to turn the iron into enriched iron, and then we can run the enriched iron through a second time to get steel dust. Then we can take that steel dust and I believe just melt it directly in the foundry to get molten steel, which we're then going to pull out over an ingot and a plate. The reason we need both an ingot and a plate, actually, we might be able to get away with not doing the ingot mold. Because what we might be able to do here is if we take some silver and some tin, we should be able to make electrum in block form. So for example, if I put 9 gold and 9 silver in, that should make 18 electrum. And then if we get another one of these foundry taps, we should then be able to extract that electrum into the casting basin, and that should make a full block of electrum for us without the need for us to get a ingot cast for it. So here, if we just right click, that's going to go ahead and pull that electrum out. It will pull out whatever is at the bottom, by the way, of this tank here, and you should be able to click to move different items down. Over here, we do now have a block of electrum that is slowly solidifying, and once it is done, you'll hear a sound, and we get electrum. Nice. Now, the electrum here does need to be in plate form in order for us to turn it into wire form, which is actually how we need it. And so what I did there was probably not the best way of doing it, but what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and make a fair amount of steel, at least 4. We'll then melt that down, and at that point, we should then be able to pull that out over a plate. In order to get a plate, we are going to have to first make the engineer's hammer from Immersive Engineering. This is super straightforward, just iron ingots, string, and sticks. Once we have that, I believe it should just be as straightforward as kind of combining that with really any material like this to get a plate. The downside of doing it this way is that it requires 3 ingots to make 1 plate, whereas in the foundry, if we want to make 1 iron plate, it is just 1 ingot's worth. But of course, we need to have at least 1 iron plate in order to actually make the plate mold. And so now we need to get at least 3 more steel dust, and we need to melt that steel dust down inside the foundry, at which point we can then pull that molten steel over the iron plate. I do believe that that is going to delete the iron plate in the process, but it's then going to give us the ability to be much more efficient on all of our plate making in the future. And again, looking back at the main quest that we're working towards here, we need to get 8 of these steel mechanical components, which means that if we use this recipe, we would need 32 steel in order to get that, which is quite a bit of steel. We could cut that down to just 16 steel if we make the engineer's workbench. That would require that we also get the engineer's blueprint. That's going to require creosote, which is going to require a coke oven, which requires coke brick. But the coke brick isn't too bad, actually. It's just clay, regular brick, and sand or sandstone. And all of that is stuff that we have. And so, in fact, it might not be a terrible idea here for us to make 27 coke brick. If we then throw that coke brick down in a 3x3x3 form, I'm also thinking kind of where I want to put this. For now, we'll put it in the wall right about here. We can do something like this. And then using our construction stick, we can do something like this. And then you just want to right-click the front with the engineer's hammer. That's going to make a coke oven. And with the coke oven, we can now begin to turn either wood into charcoal, which is going to give us a byproduct of creosote, which is actually what we're after here. Or you can turn coal into coal coke. That would also give you creosote as well. We'll leave that running for the time being. Over here, we have all of the steel dust that we're going to need to get the plate mold. And once that's melted down, we want to click on the molten steel to move it to the bottom, and then we can pull that molten steel over the steel plate, at which point we're going to get a plate cast. Nice. And so now we can go ahead and pull our electrum out in plate form, and then if we get a stone cutter, we can then turn that electrum plate into electrum wiring. So let's put you down over here, and if we do something like this and like this, we can get electrum wire. Again, if we're going to make 64 of these, we're going to need 8 electrum wire, which should be completely fine because we have 8 more ingots in here, and so all we need to do is pull all of these out in plate form and then run them all through the stone cutter to get all of the electrum wire that we're going to need. And boom, there we go, 9 electrum wire. Nice. Over here, we are halfway there on the creosote, so that is going to take a second to come in. But now it really is just a case of getting enough steel to make this happen. And so I'm going to go ahead and continue making more steel here until we have enough steel dust that we can then melt down and make into enough steel plates for all of the steel mechanical components that we're going to need. Over here, once we have a full bucket of creosote, we can put a bucket in and take that creosote out. And then now with that, we should be able to craft up some treated wood. I have a feeling we might need more than 8 treated wood to make the engineer's workbench, because we need to make treated slabs, which are easy enough, but that already takes us down to 5. And then on top of that, we need to make a fence, which is going to require 2 sticks, and already we don't have enough treated wood to make the fence. On top of that, we also need to make an engineer's work table. That bit actually seems like it might be the easiest, because we can do that. And now, yeah, we just need more sticks, and then like 1 more set of planks so that we can make the treated wooden fence, at which point we will have the engineer's work table ready to go. While we wait on that extra bucket of creosote to come in, we can also look though at making the blueprint that we're going to need for that steel mechanical component. Again, that is the engineer's blueprint. For that, we're going to need 2 more paper. That's easy enough. We're also going to need 3 blue dye, which we can definitely get from lapis. And then finally, we just need 1 lead ingot, which I think we should have over here. We totally do. Nice. And so if we do something like this, that's going to get us the engineer's blueprint. And so now I believe that we are just 1 bucket of creosote away from being able to make the engineer's workbench with the engineer's blueprint, which is going to allow us to cut the number of steel plates required down from 32 to just 16. And once we have 16 ingots worth of molten steel in our foundry, we can just start pulling this out in plate form. We also have the extra bucket of creosote here, and so we should be able to make the next set of treated planks. With that, we should be able to make our treated fence, and with that, we should finally be able to make the engineer's workbench, which we're going to go ahead and place down somewhere. Let's say right about here. I always put that down on the wrong side. I wanted it right there in the middle. We can then put in the engineer's blueprint, and with that, as we saw earlier, we should now be able to use just 2 steel plates with 1 copper to make 1 steel mechanical component, if we do this and this, as opposed to requiring the 4 steel plates, thus halving the number we need. And so real quick, I'm going to take out all of the steel here. I'm going to craft up the 8 steel mechanical components that we need, and then that should be everything that we need in order to make 64 world engine machine blocks. Boom, boom, and boom. Nice. All right, I think we have everything that we need. We have the basic control circuits, we have the dielectric casing, we have the steel mechanical component. The only other item was the electrum wire, which we also have. And so now we need to take all of those items, we need to put them into the world engine. The only slight wrinkle that's going to make this difficult for us now is the fact that we do need to provide this with 204,000 FE of power per craft, and we need to do this 4 times, and so we're going to need about 800,000 FE to make this work. The good news is that we have been slowly but surely backing up on power inside of our simple coal generator. We have almost 700,000 FE in here, and it is going up fairly quickly. I'm also making some more steel here, because I think that this is going to lose its energy if we break it. I don't know that for sure, but I think it will. One thing that I know will not lose its energy if we break it is the basic energy cube from Mekanism. To make this, we would need to get some more steel to make a steel casing. We would then also need to get 2 energy tablets. These are just gold, redstone, and infused alloys. Infused alloys are made by combining redstone and copper inside the metallurgic infuser. And so real quick, I'm going to go ahead and turn all of this enriched iron into steel. While that does its thing, we're hopefully going to get over the 800,000 mark on the simple coal generator. We can then hopefully use the steel here to actually make the steel casing for the energy cube. And of course, once we're done with the steel, we can then also use this metallurgic infuser to make the alloys required. And at that point, we should be able to take everything over to the world engine to actually make these machine blocks. We do have a little bit of extra carbon in now that this is done. You can click the dump button. It is a bit wasteful, but it is the fastest way to allow us to put more redstone in to start making the infused alloys. We are going to need 4 of these, and each infused alloy requires 10 millibuckets of redstone. So it's going to be just 1 piece of redstone per infused alloy, which means as soon as we have 4 redstone in there, we just have to wait for this to finish. I did go ahead and smelt up some of the steel, and so we should be able to make the steel casing here. We're just missing 1 osmium, which we do, of course, have over in here. Let's do a quick one of these, and then do we have everything else required to make these energy tablets? I believe we do. We're just waiting for this last little craft to finish. And boom, that is done. Let's go ahead and make another energy tablet, and let's make our first energy cube. And then I'm kind of hoping here that if I do this, it's going to receive the energy. It is going to receive the energy. The simple coal generator is going to push directly into here. And we do need a bit more power than what we have, though, because again, we need, to be safe, maybe about 850,000 RF. And so I am going to throw this into here as well. Although, to be fair, what we can do is we can leave this generating power whilst we take this over to start the first craft. So if we go to the world engine, I'm hopeful that we can put in the required items here, like this. And then I'm also hopeful that if we put down our energy cube, in here we can click side configuration, we can click the right hand side and change it to output, and then from there, it's gonna go. And it's going to start making something. It took all of the items, which is interesting. It drained all of the power very quickly as well. I'm really hoping this continues to work. What I'm going to do, just to play it safe, I'm going to go to my claims manager. I'm going to claim this chunk, and I'm going to chunk load this chunk as well, just so that this doesn't like despawn or like stop working when I leave if it unloaded. Speaking of which, over here, we should click the claims manager. And, oh, it turns out, I think chat has told me this, that the world engine is actually below our base. And so by claiming those chunks, we've actually claimed the chunks for our base as well. You should claim these chunks straight away because it prevents, like, creepers from blowing up your stuff. Either way, back over here, we're at 80,000. I think we're pretty close. I don't know if we're quite there yet. We do have to change this back to input, of course, if we actually want it to receive the energy from the coal generator. But I think once we get to 100,000 there, that should be everything. And so now if we once again use our action pad to go back to the world engine, hopefully that is everything that we need. It totally is. Look at that. We got 64 world engine machine blocks. Nice. Okay, I will take this with me back home. Although I think we can now go back to the quartermaster. Never mind. You have to be closer to the quartermaster to do that. Do I have to be in the lobby first to go to the quartermaster? I do. Okay, but it's an instant teleportation. Okay, here we go. Boom. I don't have much more I can do for you right now unless you're looking for items in my shop. Go have a chat with the other echoes to see what they need. The work system will be updated with more knowledge soon. And so now we can just buy stuff from this guy here. And of course, we get quest rewards. We also get a random gift of the stone. We got a heart amulet. The heart amulet here says right-click to open, contains 40 canisters. Oh, okay, I think if we wear this, we're actually just going to get more HP. I think the more hearts you have inside of that, the more HP you get. And so you'll see now it says 5 times, and then our heart levels. And so I think we are pretty good on HP now. That would have been useful before the fight that we did in the last episode. But now, I think, next time when we come back, we should be able to start working on some of these other quest lines here. In fact, if we take a quick look back at /home, some of these might not be too bad. The lava quest just wants an obsidian plate. The obsidian, we did get told we can make fairly easily with regular stone. Do I have a single piece of stone? I do. If we take this and the entropy manipulator, I believe we can take the stone, shift right click the lava to turn that into obsidian, and then if we had a diamond pickaxe, which we don't, we could then go ahead and harvest this. We might be able to harvest it with our diamond hammer here, and then we can go ahead and melt that down and hopefully pull it out in plate form, and that should be the obsidian plate quest complete. We'll throw you in there. That is working. It's just really, really, really slow at smelting. That's fine. Over here, there's a quest that wants us to get brass. Brass, I believe we can also make by combining together copper and zinc. And it looks like it's a 3-to-1 there. So if we take 3 copper and 1 zinc and we melt those down in here, let's do 1 zinc and 3 copper. That should get us, I think, 4 brass. Now, ideally, we'd want to pull that out in either ingot or block form. And so I guess the block form is going to be easier here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 3 zinc, and then I'm going to put in 6 more copper. That's going to take us up to 12 brass. This is all just to kind of save us having to make an ingot cast. We do have enough steel to where we could do that, but we're fine. We're fine. That's some free gunpowder there. I'll take it. We should now be able to take the brass and just pull that out in block form. That's going to get us brass ingots, and then if we want to make brass casing for the quest here, all we would need to do is take some logs, place the log down, strip the log by right-clicking with a regular X, and then right-click on that log with a brass ingot. Nice. That gets us a casing, and then the next quest does want us to turn that into a train casing, and we can do that by just right-clicking the brass casing with the obsidian plate that we're about to make. And so as soon as this melts, any day now, I see the problem here. Apparently, it will go all the way to the end, and it won't actually melt unless you have the required fuel. So because we melted the brass while this was melting, we only have 100 millibuckets of lava left. So I think that we need to do this, and this to final. There we go. So now we can go ahead and do something like that. Hopefully that's going to make an obsidian plate. It actually used not that much obsidian because we got 1,000 millibuckets from that one block. So we can make quite a few of these, which is really nice. Boom. That gets us the train casing, which we do need to pick up. There we go. And we can obviously go ahead and start claiming some of the extra cash here. We're going to get a lava chicken, which is very interesting. I wonder if we can use that to generate an unlimited amount of lava fairly easily for us. We'll have to give that a try. But now that is basically that whole part of the quest line done. We need to head back to the machinist to have a bit of a chat. So let's first go to spawn, then let's go to the machinist, and let's see what you have to say.
We'll need a super powerful alloy that's usually only obtainable via the world engine. Problem is, yours is too weak to handle the infusion method, even if you had the resources. Our records show there are corrupted vaults out there, hiding forgotten materials from ages past. WERK isn't fully aware of what awaits you. I'd recommend gearing up with at least some diamond gear, just in case. Find and explore the vault, and infuse the train casings with the alloy you find within. Bring me 20 of those alloy-infused casings.
So for this, now, we need to get some of these shadow steel. The shadow steel is usually quite expensive, requiring dark steel ingots, which you have to make using the alloy smelter. We can't do that just yet, and so instead, we need to locate a machinist vault. And then I believe if we do a quick /home, that's going to point us in the direction of the nearest vault. So we need to head this way, and then we need to fight through what sounds like could be a fairly dangerous vault in order to try and get some shadow steel. And then to complete the end of this quest line, we need 20 shadow casing, which is 20 train casing, and 20 shadow steel. So I'm really intrigued as to how much we're going to get per vault. I'm assuming we don't have to do 20 vaults, but who knows? The good news is that we do get at least 10 plates of obsidian from just the one block there, and so we are going to just need the one extra block of obsidian to get all of the train casings that we need. We also are not going to need that much more brass either. All of that should be pretty straightforward, and so next time we'll come back, we will, I guess, start by digging our way to the vault and seeing if we can find enough Shadow Steel in that vault, and then we'll also look at completing this Shadow Casing questline, at which point I think in theory we could then go back to the Echo of Guidance, but we might also look at getting our way through the Magician questline as well, because this also doesn't look too difficult to do, but that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of StoneBlock 4 there.